On managing relegation strugglers and title-winning teams, completely different skill sets. Well, when Vincent Kompany signed a new long-term contract extension at Burnley, remember that after leading them to the Premier League promised land with 101 points in the Championship, Burnley chairman Alan Pace joked that it was like dating the, quote, most beautiful girl in town. You stay together as long as possible, knowing she'll never marry you. He's since left, yes, but not in the way we thought, because the very next season, Burnley were flailing, they were relegated, and they got just 24 points, and even twice points deducted, Everton got more than that. So when Bayern Munich were linked in the summer, even some Burnley staff members scoffed. This European Nights YouTube episode is brought to you by our great friends at New Balance, the incredible brand behind the boot, giving players total control of the ball and the game, the Tekela touch. Perfected. Vincent Kompany's on course to soar through the Bundesliga, but he did struggle with less talent in the Premier League. So, Raw, is it a different skill set managing top-tier talent and that he can do against a relegation dogfight? How transferable are those skills?
It's a really interesting point. And I suppose, Guardiola's the perfect example of it. We've never really seen it with Guardiola. That his argument has always been that his methods work with the best players in the world. He needs the absolute best players in the world to execute what his vision sort of has in store. Kompany's managed on both sides. But then I guess the parallel with Burnley in the Championship is Burnley were the Bayern Munich of the Championship. They had a better quality of player than all of their opponents. They had the ability to dominate games, to dominate possession, to control their destiny. They effectively had agency in each of those games, just as Bayern do domestically. And the results there have been quite similar, that Kompany clearly can set a team up to dominate a game and to kind of make the most of their physical, technical, tactical superiority, whatever it might be. I guess the difference is, maybe the difficulty, is when he's running into teams that are of the same level as Bayern in the Champions League, where he has suddenly looked a little bit more like Premier League manager Vincent Kompany than Championship manager Vincent Kompany.
But tell me, even as Bayern's like 7th or 8th choice, what kind of manager is Kompany, in your words? What defines his system? And why did Bayern ultimately go for a guy freshly relegated, slightly self-soiling in that process, besides that he admittedly looked so bloody good in his custom look of t-shirt, blazer, baseball hat?
It had been a little bit of a dispiriting summer for Bayern. Obviously, Alonso was the first choice, Nagelsmann was second. Rangnick was the kind of the okay, well, I suppose it might as well be him choice. And they were prepared to give Ralf Rangnick all sorts of control over reshaping the club, not just the squad, to try and make it more modern. They spoke to Glasner. I think they spoke to Unai Emery. I think they approached Julen Lopetegui. That suggests that maybe they were quite desperate. And then they turned to Kompany. And it was strange at the time that they were, Bayern Munich, one of the great clubs in European football, were looking at a manager who'd just been relegated and relegated emphatically. But I think what Bayern's logic was, and whether it was flawed or not is for other people to say, he played expansive football. He was playing big club football at Burnley. He just didn't have the players to do it. If you looked at kind of the patterns of play, what Kompany wanted his team to do, he very clearly wanted he was trying to introduce a system that would work much better with a team that tended to have an awful lot of possession. And I think that appealed to them. I think the fact that he is so worldly and sophisticated, he speaks innumerable languages, 40, 50, maybe 60 languages. I can't remember how many Vincent Kompany speaks. But he speaks German from his time at Hamburg. He's well connected. He's very, very personable. He has an aura about him, despite the fact that obviously as a manager, he'd not necessarily achieved the sort of things you'd expect a Bayern manager to have achieved. I think they basically thought he ticks an awful lot of boxes, except for the one that says has not been recently relegated. But because they'd had all those rejections, they kind of didn't have a choice. I'm not quite sure who would have been on the list if Kompany had said, no, this step's not right for me yet. I think they would have been getting into kind of caretaker territory. It's not to say that he was an option of absolute last resort, but I think within Bayern there was an acceptance that he was a risk, and he was a risk they kind of had to take.
But Kompany's articles in Munich include details like playing music as a soundtrack to warm-ups, putting in workaholic 14-hour days with his coaching staff. Man's mad. Kompany, honestly, you've already hit this. He's an erudite character. He's a charismatic man. I think he speaks 5 languages. When The Guardian visited him, his bookshelf included biographies of Mandela, Gandhi and Obama, histories of the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's got a global business degree. His dissertation was on how Premier League teams can benefit from home field advantage. And so far, at Bayern in the Bundesliga, it's all worked perfectly. Haters be damned. 11 games, no losses, just 7 goals conceded, top of the league by 6 clear points, and they're blowing teams out of the water by 3, 4, 5-0 score lines. The big tell of Kompany's true abilities will ultimately come in this season's Champions League, which Bayern looked at as a key competition, potentially one that they should win this season. Once again, thanks to our friends at New Balance for being sponsors of European Nights on the Men in Blazers YouTube channel.